So this week I started on a game called Influencer Simulator. It was mostly inspired by this Instagram page, which is all about making fun of influencers, which I find really funny. I figured it would be kind of a funny game if I did the same thing and made fun of influencers in game form. So I gave myself a challenge. Can I make a stupid game about influencers within 1 week? Let's find out. So the first thing I did was make a list of the features that I thought would make the game pretty fun, and kind of go along with my theme of influencers gone wild. I kind of had this idea for like a list of selfies you had to take, because most of the influencers is really just about taking selfies. So I guess I'm making kind of a selfie simulator, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so now that we did that, we need to have some characters in the game, obviously. So we found this asset on the asset store, the Civil Characters pack. It's basically just a bunch of city characters. Good job on that, guys. Looks really nice. I'm going to throw that in the game, and they will be our characters. I also threw in this Character Fundamental Movement pack, which is really useful for getting movement up and running. I really like this asset. I was playing with it not too long ago. And lastly, I needed this city pack that I could throw some characters into, and we can run around. Basically, it will be our little sandbox for the game. The Unity Asset Store, such wondrous asset flipping potential. So now that the stuff's in the game, I checked out the animations that were included in the package for the characters, and it's really kind of limited right now, so I'm gonna have to make my own animations. That's cool though, because I kind of want to have the selfie mode be its separate animation, and I like generally having control over animations because it's like the only thing I'm actually good at. Next thing I did is start to throw a scene in because we kind of need a place to run around. And I started working on the character movement functions so that the character can move around, which is, I think, necessary. Great, this is exactly what I was going for. Now that we've got basic movement working, I'm going to make it so that we can take some good old-fashioned selfies. So we started animating the character so that she could be in this selfie pose on the separate layer, so that you can move around and take selfies at the same time. I also found this smartphone off the asset store, which is the influencer's most important tool. At this point, I had to reanimate the idle animation and the walking animation because the rig wouldn't work with my new animation, and it was kind of a pain, but I did it, and I'm pretty happy that I have more control over the animations now, because now I can make her walk like this, which is pretty much how I imagine influencers to be walking when they're running around a city looking for photo ops. I then wanted to make it so that the camera follows the character when you're entering selfie mode, so that it looks like you're taking a selfie. So I first added Cinemachine, but I realized that kind of didn't work because the camera on the walking controller doesn't really work well with Cinemachine. So I just kind of went with a regular camera that toggles on and off when you enter selfie mode. I then needed to make the character rotate with the mouse when you're in selfie mode to kind of simulate rotating the smartphone around the influencer's body. After that was done, I needed to think about and design how the selfies were going to be captured. Like, would they be going into a portfolio, or would they be saved to your hard drive, or what? So I sat down and started designing this on paper. I ultimately decided that I would have to do both, saving them to hard drive as well as making a portfolio in the game that you can look through. So I started coding out how to capture screenshots in the game. I also went to freesound.org and found a nice sound effect for the camera shutter sound. It took a little bit of finagling, but I finally figured out how to save captured screenshots to your disk. Basically, the main confusion I had was that when you save the files in the editor, they go to your root folder instead of your application persistent data path, which is usually where on a build they will save the files to. So doing some Googling, I found a quick script I threw in that allows me to take photos as well as saves it to file and previews the picture in the game. So I'm going to use this as the basis for the portfolio that I'm going to have in the game as well. So obviously this portfolio is going to be an Instagram feed. And what better way to have the feed show in the game than having an in-game menu that takes place on the influencer's smartphone screen? So I quickly animated the character in the menu screen and put a camera facing the screen. So now you can get the really immersive feel and sensation of going onto your smartphone screen. Very meta and kind of depressing. I then went about designing the actual interface of the Instagram feed. I made the profile picture, which I think later I'll make dynamic. And I made it so that the pictures that you take show up on the feed. So at this point, things are working pretty well, I like the way it's going, and I feel like it's time to add some real content to the game. Namely, I want to make stuff that we can take pictures with, and implement that selfie list I was talking about earlier, basically the goals of the game, to help the influencer get more followers, which is the influencer's sole purpose. So I started writing some ideas out and looked to the internet for some inspiration. There was quite a lot of it actually, and it was actually pretty disturbing, a lot of the stuff people have done for selfies. So I actually had to tone it down a bit because I don't think my game would go over well if I actually did some of the stuff that they did in the game. Like some people took some really insensitive photos of themselves in front of Holocaust memorials and Chernobyl and all that stuff. So I'm just going to keep the most insensitive stuff out and mostly just keep the game focused on really dangerous selfies that are really stupid to take. Almost like a PSA to not take stupid, dangerous selfies. The most consistent theme that I saw was dangerous animal selfies. Like, a lot of people like to take photos of themselves with bears and wild animals and them swimming with alligators and stuff like that. So I decided to make that one of the most consistent themes for selfies in the game. Basically, this girl going around finding wild animals to harass and eventually get eaten by. I think that's pretty funny. I also realized that we're going into Darwin Award territory here, so maybe like some of the achievements you can make in the game are indeed Darwin Awards or something like that. So I started looking around for assets on the asset store that would be really good for my animals that I'd be putting in the game. And I found some well-priced assets, but I kind of wanted to find some that were maybe a little bit cheaper. I found out that Paint 3D that's on most Microsoft Windows computers has a huge 3D library of free assets. I'm definitely going to be using a lot of these for the game. I then set out on designing the level with all of the different key locations in mind for all of the different photo ops. I started off with a beach because I had this idea of the game kind of taking place in LA or in San Francisco or somewhere on a beach, because a lot of influencers like to take beach photos. That's also where we'll have the shark and other stuff like that. I then set up the basic background and environment. Found this cool tower asset in the 3D library. Perfect for another dangerous selfie. After I got the tower up, I really wanted to see what Ragdoll would look like in action. Oh, that one's going on the gram. Next I added a zombie in the game that would basically come to life when you take a selfie with it, pretending to be a dead body at first. Kinda serves the influencer right for trying to take a photograph with a dead body. Kinda reminds me of something. I then started working on the train tracks so we can do our dangerous train track selfie. And actually at this point, I swapped out the base city scene for a scene that actually had better performance, because I found that the original scene kind of was slowing down my PC, and I actually liked the way it looks better too. There's actually a lot more detail. Next I went back to the trains to try to animate them and make them go on the tracks, but I realized that animation was kind of taking too long, so I figured maybe I could use hinge joints instead. Then this happened. I don't even know. I threw out that idea and decided to just animate one train and then offset the animations for each train so they all have the same animation. It's not perfect, but you know what? I'm not going for perfect here. So at this point, it's already Thursday and the game is nowhere near completed. So I've decided to just kind of scrap the little details and just focus on getting the core mechanics made by today
and maybe I'll just throw in all the assets that I want, like the gorillas and all the animals and all the stuff that you're going to take selfies with, and just make it work. And maybe tomorrow, if I have time, I'll focus on polishing the environment and the coding a little bit more. But for now, I'm just going to focus on making it work, making it to design, and that's it.
So I first quickly and dirtily made the icons for the different apps on the phone. This will basically be the in-game menu navigation. I started coding the objectives for the game, kind of conscious of the fact that I was running out of time and had to make the game fast. I then just started throwing in all of the 3D characters and assets that I wanted. I started putting ladders on everything and coded a really crappy ladder movement code. At this point, I'm really just trying to rush and make it work. It doesn't have to be good. I animated this giant octopus kraken thing. I also made it so that when you go underwater, the background turns this blue color just to signify that you're underwater. I then added a volcano because everyone wants to take a selfie in the middle of a volcano. I also added a way for the volcano to kill you if you're in there for too long. I threw in some toxic waste, and I threw in a way to die from it. Next I popped in a Boeing 787, which allows you to skydive. So it's currently 1:30 on Friday, and I've decided to finish up the game. It's not complete, it doesn't work in a lot of ways, but I think it's kind of funny, and I think it's fun, at least for 5 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and we will play the game and see how it is. So my last minute cut was I decided to just cut out the whole feature of the checklist itself. It was going to be way too much code to implement, and I just didn't have time. So instead I just opted for every time you take a picture you get 10 followers, and this kind of just makes the player want to take more pictures. And I know it's kind of stupid, but sometimes you just got to make cuts and do what you got to do to finish a project. So what are my final thoughts about this project? Well, first off, I don't think I'm going to be really marketing this project. It's really, really horrible. And I don't say that lightly. But it was never meant to be really that good anyway. And I hope that doing this quick challenge actually makes me a little bit better at making things faster. I think for my next project, I'll do something a little simpler in scope and with a lot less graphics, because I think the more models and graphics you have, the more convoluted things get. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this stupid little project I did. I think it gets the point across. I think it communicates my message in a really silly way. And yeah, I just want to thank you for watching me go through this crazy journey. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this game. If you really want to play it, you can. I really don't recommend it because it's horrible. It runs with terrible performance and it's completely broken. But it's still pretty funny, I think. Anyway, I'm going to be doing this series every week. I'm going to be doing a new game. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications. And I want to thank you guys for watching.